They won't. Half hour.
They won't.
All right, the time is now 6 p.m. on August 24th, and I'll call to order our regularly scheduled McMinnville Fire District Board of Directors meeting. Chief, if you could do roll call.
Director Sparrow? Here. Treasurer Traff is supposed to be on Zoom, but maybe on a call. I don't see him on right now. Secretary Pratt? Here. Vice President Smith? Here. President Garvin?
Here. Now would be time for Pledge of Allegiance. If Director Sparrow, if you could lead us in that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, that takes us to our consent agenda, which is approval of our August 10 regular meeting minutes. If you get a motion for that.
Mr. President, it looks like they matched my notes exactly and look real good. I'd like to move that we approve minutes.
All right, we have a motion by Secretary Pratt, and second. Second by Director Sparrow. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed signify by saying nay. Motion passes 4-0 for the consent agenda. That takes us to public comment. We'll wait for some public comments first. All right, so public comment period. This is a chance for citizens to speak regarding district business not to exceed 3 minutes. And initially we'll look to the audience. It doesn't look like we have anybody in the audience for public comment. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
Nobody's raising their hand.
Nobody's raising their hand on Zoom. One last call for those on Zoom. If you'd like to comment, just scroll over to the 3 dots at the bottom of your screen and click raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll close public comment, which brings us to our action items, which is board policies 13 through 16 for review and approval. The board policy 13, the decorum and order. Chief, is this pretty much out of an existing document or an ORS? Or?
It is. It's not ORS per se, but it's pulled out of SEAO's recommended policies and with minimal modifications to reflect.
Okay. So hearing that, since it's not ORS, if there is any modifications anybody would like to make, now would be the time to do it.
It's similar to the city council's agreements.
Any discussion or edits from you, Vice President Smith?
No, looks good.
Looks good. All right, we'll move on to board policy 14. The selection and duties of legal counsel. Same thing as the SDO best practice.
That's correct. Other than the fact that we are required to have legal counsel by statutory.
Yes. Is there any edits you'd like to make on that?
No, looks like
Looks good. All right, okay, so board policy 15, standing committees of the board.
So this one, there are some that are statutorily required, like the budget committee, the audit committee, and then the personnel committee is ORS for districts with that have employees and personnel. The strategic planning committee is an optional one, but I assumed, and I added that one in there because I assumed that this board was going to want to, because we are new, are going to want to develop a strategy on how we grow and move, that would probably be a relatively long-standing committee that you would want to have in place. You do not have to have that in here. You can appoint that committee somewhere else down the road. So that's not something that's required by statute. I just put that in there because I just made the assumption. Doesn't have to be there, but if you chose to have one, you could appoint it when you get to that point in time. You can modify your policy to add it later if that's what you wanted to do. But I just pre-placed it there just as a matter of form. One committee or actually commission that you don't see in here is your Civil Service Commission, and that will be done through another process. So that will be another one that's out there, but not part of as a committee level. They're in a different role.
Okay. Any questions for the chief?
We discussed maybe some language cleanup under budget committee, line item 6. Says the board reserves the right to interview and background applicants, maybe changing that to perform background investigations or perform background checks.
Chief, on number 5 of the budget committee, it says, well, earlier in that, it talks about terms expired December 31st. Number 5 says we need to review appointments in December with the intent of making appointments at the regular February meeting.
Right.
Why February, not January?
This is a statutory requirement, but my suggestion, well, because of the way we have to process, advertise and interview, I would suggest that we probably run the advertising in November and
Interview December.
interview in December, and you can appoint January, as long as they're appointed by February.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to get the people in positions so they're ready for the process.
Yeah, you gotta get through the budget process.
Don't ask me why I know that stuff. Okay.
Is that something you guys wanna just leave as is, so it gives us some room there, or do you wanna put in more strict language that we wanna have appointments ready to go by the first part of January?
I think maybe if you changed it to making appointments by the regular February meeting, that would give you the option of,
Or the first regular February meeting. By the. At the,
because then if you were ready.
Yeah.
does that work for you?
Yeah.
That way, if we don't have, we're still trying to find an
Yeah.
applicant or get an interview in, okay, so I will modify that to make sure I'm on the right page. By the first regular February meeting,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
You have recommendations for other committees that could be helpful?
Other types of committees, I was brainstorming some committees and I didn't put them in there just because of the load of organizing the committees and trying to get them all dialed in. So I put the mandatory ones in the one that I thought would be the highest priority. If you'd like some recommendations, I can come back next meeting with some options for other committees. It's not that big of a deal and I can always,
Can rely on expertise or, on this.
I'd be happy to do that.
See what I'm considering.
I don't think we have to rush this policy through by any means.
No, I can just pull it out and we can put it on hold and I can come back with some recommendations.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any other feedback for board policy 15 before we table that one?
No, I like the idea of the strategic planning committee.
Yeah.
All the stuff that's gonna come up.
Yep, always gotta be looking ahead.
Can we go back? I want to go back and have the conversation on that, so I'm working on the recommendations.
Yeah.
I'd like some thoughts from the board on what your thoughts are on what level. The more committees I create, the more we get into operations, and so I guess that's kind of my question is and I'm not saying there's some out there that wouldn't be in operations that we can take a look at, but I want to be cautious about kind of crossing the policy versus operations line with the committee side of things. So
Yeah.
if you're, I can look at the ones that other places have that make sense. And some of the ones that I was looking at that I wasn't sure if it made sense or not right now, and I can bring those back as options. And easily, I'll just advertise them and plug them in. If you pick ones that you think are interested, we can plug them in there and we can do that.
Yeah, I think if you even brought back some that you weren't 100% sold on, but
Sure,
tell us the reasons why. And
sure, absolutely. Okay. I just want to make sure I'm not, okay.
yeah,
All right.
but yeah, we definitely want to stay in our lane.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
I just, okay.
Appreciate it.
Policy 15 before we move to this really long policy.
So while we're on the investment guidelines, just so you understand where we're at with some of our investment stuff. We are in the process, LGIP does have all of our information. They are processing the accounts so that we will have access. Josh just came on.
Hi, guys.
Let the record show, Treasurer Trapp joined us at 6:16 this evening after return from a call.
So the LGIP account falls within the statutory guidelines of this, so you don't have to actually list it out. There are obviously a lot of other options for the district to consider down the road. I'm not saying that those aren't out there, but the city or the county uses the LGIP accounts to make the tax payments, all those types of things. So that's why we had to kind of get that one dialed first. And then a lot of the districts, as a matter of form, use the LGIP account as like the holding account for their funds, and then just pull out enough to pay the bills, and then that way they're getting the higher rates on the backside of their operational funds, even if it's, even though it's operational monies, they keep it over there right until the end of the month, and then move it over to pay bills, and then
So they get the higher interest.
so they get the higher interest throughout the time that it's sitting there in the banks. That's just it's an accounting practice that other places do. So.
Okay.
This one just says fall state law on the guidelines.
That looks pretty good.
So with that, I would take a motion to adopt board policies 13, 14, and 16. With board policy 15 coming back to us next.
So
Meeting. Moved by Vice President Smith and seconded by Secretary Pratt. All those in favor of policies 13, 14, and 16 passing, signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay.
I saw his lips move, but
And that must show that motion passes 5-0 for board policies 13, 14, and 16. So that brings us to fire chief hiring process update. I'll turn it over to Director Hedges on that, but I would just say I think the biggest thing tonight to take away, besides whatever Vicky brings up, is making sure we narrow down a 2 to 3 day window to get the chief panel interviews done. And I did talk to some of you about dates, so we'll turn over to Vicky and go from there.
So it's my biggest goal for tonight is to get a date set for interviews so that we can start to plan out the rest of the process based on those dates. I've been in contact with SDAO. It sounds like things are going well. A lot of advertising is happening right now. I also would encourage everybody on the board to share the social media posts. I know the district has posted through their social media. So please feel free to also share that posting. Sounds like it's going well. I've also started planning for the panel interview who will participate on those and kind of starting to get questions ready and get that set up. My main goal is to nail down a date for those interviews.
For the panel interviews, that's the day, the board interviews are a day. And then the final decision, is it, you foresee that to be a day or?
I don't think that has to be a day. It's more like being available for negotiations.
Okay.
Don't necessarily have to be
Yeah,
in person.
so the initial flow chart that was shared last meeting showed panel interviews the 10th, board interviews the 11th, final decision the 11th through the 13th. And from feedback of your guys' schedules, it sounds like the 11th through the 13th, or if you think we can do it the 12th through the 13th. If we need 3 days or you prefer 3 days, then the 11th through the 13th is my understanding what works best for the board.
Okay, is the 12th through the 13th preferred though? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay,
2 of them are on shift, the 11th.
got it. Sorry, I'm just gonna pull up the calendar real quick.
I do think it's important we don't go over 3 days, just not knowing who's applying and their travel arrangements and costs and stuff, that we keep it compressed if we can.
I think it makes sense to do the 12th and the 13th. I think we can make that work and then final. decision and negotiations on the following Monday, which is the 16th. That gives you the weekend also to think over anything that you might need to think through. So that should work. 12th and 13th with a final decision by.
So for my note processes, the 12th will be the panel interviews.
Yes,
13th will be the meet and greet with the executive session interviews,
the
board interviews,
12th will be the 3 panel interviews.
the 3
The
panels.
13th will be board interviews.
Right, okay. And meet and greet, was there, did you want to meet and greet on that day also?
Yeah,
Or did you want it on the day of the board meetings? Or the board interview, the panel interviews, sorry.
no, I think the meet and greet should be the final 2 applicants.
Okay, okay,
That will be on the 13th.
Yeah.
Yes, and then,
and then negotiations set up for the board for the following Monday,
yes, which would be the 16th.
contract negotiations at that point.
And is that, you want all 5 of us in person or,
I don't think that that's needed. I think we just need a decision.
okay,
Then we can start to have those conversations. We can circle back. It's more just being available for those conversations. which
okay.
pretty much is
What does the 16th look like? Are people available for phone calls and anybody on shift that day
I'll be on shift, but
to take a phone call? Treasurer Trap, are you on shift on the 16th? You're muted.
There we go. Sorry, I wasn't unable to unmute. I am available that day.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that work for you?
I'm available on 16th.
Evening,
16th, I think we're all available,
evening,
whatever.
in the day, it sounds.
Yeah.
during the day?
Yeah.
Okay, oh, because it's gonna be negotiated,
Yeah.
that's right, sorry about that, disregard.
So right now, we're slated to have our 3 panel interviews on the 12th, and then our final applicants, the top 2 to 3 will be just board panel interviews, and then that evening, the top 2 will be a community meet and greet, and then we'll make a final decision on Monday.
Perfect.
Does that work for everybody?
It's good for me.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else on the chief process?
Not at this point. Waiting and getting applicants at this point. Advertising, get it out there so people know that the job's there, but it sounds like we've had good feedback so far and calling and asking questions.
And we've got some applicants.
Yes, I don't know how many.
So that takes us to other business. Which will be, first up is board committee and liaison reports. LoSAP, any updates on that treasure draft, or you want to wait till the next meeting?
Yeah, nothing new on the LoSAP program. Chief Law was telling me really the next step is the volunteers are voting on how the points are calculated, and that's going to be on September 6th. So nothing will progress until that point.
Okay. And branding committee, Director Sparrow, any update on that?
I've got a little more direction as far as leadership on that and getting that going. I just want to verify as I reached out to people to start planning some meetings that it's Director Traff and myself, Shelley Zinda, Darby, and then Godfrey. Is that the entire? Okay, so I'll get, we'll shoot some dates out and see what works for people and hopefully get moving on that.
Awesome, thank you so much. Item B is board information reports. Anything anybody wants to share? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to information only, which is department reports. President Godfrey from Local 3099. The union didn't have any updates tonight. Earlier today, we do have volunteer president Pete Goodman in the crowd, if you'd like to.
Evening, folks.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. So the volunteers had a few things in August that we've done, National Night Out, we had a truck and a Medic 11 on display at the event. Popcorn wagon was there and we gave out free popcorn. Fire and Life Safety was there. That's a volunteer group too. Coming up this month, this weekend is Cruise McMinnville. We're gonna have an engine with a scout troop. They've asked to have that for a display item. And that'll be on Cal Street, and the popcorn wagon will be at the event also. Giving away popcorn, but we'll take donations for the Volunteer Association. And we have our upcoming pancake baby in October,
We have a date on that.
the 8th. Yes. That way it won't conflict with the 15th. Sounds good.
Other thing I would mention and remind is, Chief Giddings is retiring and his party is
Yes, it's on the
Six.
September 6th at 7 p.m. So
We've posted a potential quorum, but no business, so that everyone can come without any conflict.
he just celebrated 50 years yesterday. So if you can make it, definitely come by and tell him thank you for his service.
Can you repeat the date again, please?
September 6th at 7 p.m. in this room.
Yep.
Now on the fire chief's report or reports.
Well, a couple of things going on. Obviously, we're working at the transition out the old rural district. We were trying to track down an auditor for them because their auditor didn't want to do a district closing audit. They really actually have never had an audit until this year would be the audit. They've only had to do the reviews because they've never spent more than $500,000. When the city's rates went up, that pushed them into the audit zone, and their auditor or financial CPA said, "Yeah, I don't want to do that." So we're in limbo trying to figure out how we're going to do that. Now we have the ability to do it. Either way, it's coming out of the money that's coming our way. So we've put them in touch with an audit company that we used for Amity that we were very pleased with. They're going to jump in and help them out and get that taken care of for them really quickly. And that was the one stone holding up the transition of the resources coming our way. Well, that an LGIP account so that they could transfer the funds. But so that is moving forward. They're going to engage in that process and get that taken care of. That should take care of those issues as far as that part of the process. The board computers aren't here this meeting because everybody in IS except for one is on vacation or out doing things. So I anticipate and hope that we'll have the emails are set up. They'll be here with computers and emails for the first meeting in September. Computers and email accounts. First meeting in September. They'll probably be here a few minutes early. If you want to come a couple minutes early, we'll get you set up with your laptops and your email accounts. Make sure you're all set. A quick brief on the transition of IS. I met with Scott Burke on the concept of how we're being built out. And then I met with a separate IS professional to verify that was what we wanted to have done, because I don't know IS enough to make sure that what we're having done is what is having done. Scott is right on target with what I hoped he would be, and how they're going to build this up as I can't remember the term, client or something along those terms. And we've still funneled through their firewall. But if the board decides to stay with the city, we'll stay in that capacity and run as it runs normal now. Well, not as it runs now, as it will run here in the next couple of months once they transition everything over. We'll be on a separate line coming into the city through the firewall, not tied to the city stuff. But if we choose to go with another organization, the client line and access would just go to the other vendor, and then they would manage our IS for us. So that will give us the opportunity to either stay with the city or not. And you can make that decision based on prices. You're saying.
We'll own the infrastructure. We're basically a customer of the city's IS department.
That's correct. Yeah, everything, we have $100,000 in this budget to build out the infrastructure of the fire department, which are switches and everything else that have to happen upstairs. But we will still be funneled through the IS firewall as our safety curtain, and then they can, the majority of our work will be, we're on what's the cloud?
365.
365, thank you. We're on 365. They will remove us from the platform where we have the city access G drive and that kind of stuff, and will give us OneDrive accounts. And then we'll be set up in that capacity so that whoever is gonna tenant, I think the term. So whoever takes us on we can transfer our access as a tenant to that individual and go through their firewall, or we can stay with the city. So there's the benefits to the ability to move on if we want, or if we're happy with where we're at, the cost is reasonable. And I keep saying we, but it will be you at that point in time. But we are being built out to have that ability to do that. That was our goal, and that was what we budgeted for. So that is moving forward, and Scott Berg and his team are moving on that pretty well. And they got a lot of stuff ordered and ready to come in and do some switch work. We are updating we're open continuous for firefighter EMT and firefighter paramedic on NTN. We're open continuous on the city's website. We just boosted the EMTs 3-4 weeks ago to get us to the point where we can run our process here on
The
30th,
August 30th.
August 30th. We're putting out, we're boosting out an application tomorrow or Monday for Western Chiefs for the paramedic program positions to try and get a boost in that, because we're just not seeing a lot of applicants in the open continuous stuff. So we're going to try and hit that. We'll hit social media with the flyer we're building and try to see if we can get some driving out. We lost another paramedic yesterday. It was our last day here. So that puts us at 6 vacancies.
6 vacancies, 1 EMT. We've got
5
one
paramedics.
1 in background.
And, oh yeah, we have 1. And then, yeah.
All right. Any questions for the chief?
Well, I'm going to ask a question for the board, because you have contacts in the fire service that I don't. We're looking at, we're building out our civil service rules. And there are, in the civil service world, there are civil service rules that say that you have to have a minimum of 3 applicants come to the commission in order for them to, you have to move 3 forward in order for them to move them to the selection process, final selection process. There are some districts out there that have an open continuous option because of the lack of applicants in the last couple of years. If you know of someone out there that has language around that, we're hitting our attorney in SDL also. But if you know of someone that has language around that or is using language around that in your civil service, I'd appreciate any feedback you can give us on that. And I'm just asking because you have contacts all over the place. So we are working through that process. We're sending out emails, and we're diving into other policies and other procedures. But statewide, it's been a challenge recently, and some of the districts have, because they were locked in through their original civil service rules, they could not hire a full-time person. They had to hire them as temporary because they couldn't push through to the commission to move to the chief's interviews. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen here. We want to make sure that even if we get 1 good applicant, we can push it forward, run them through the process, and if they qualify and they meet the requirements, we can hire them.
And you're looking for language that we're trying to do.
That would, yeah, allow us that opportunity to have that. One or two of the departments are using in their language. It uses it as an open continuous language. Some of them don't have that. Some of them do. So I haven't run that up to Truman yet, but we wanted to kind of have a draft before I fired it off to Truman to make sure that we're in the right place.
Sounds good. Any other questions for the chief?
Chief Hannafin was just at a award celebration this evening. I would like her to share a little bit of some of the things that we do to our partners, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I had one question just about the EMT process. That's 12-person process, yeah?
12-person process.
Yes.
12 applicants.
12 applicants. And then how many positions? I know you said you have 6 vacancies, but some of those are paramedic. right? So how many could we fill with that process? Providing which.
So we have one EMT vacancy right now. So the 12 in will probably net us a yield of a list of half of that.
Yeah, it just depends on how the process goes, but we're hoping for a healthy list from that.
Okay. So one of our positions is an EMT position that is becoming vacant.
Within a shift or two.
Okay, so we'll have that one to fill. The other 5 are paramedic positions. And when Director Sparrow was here, we limited ourselves to the number of EMTs because of scheduling and because of needing the ALS ambulances. So we're still kind of in that realm. We have 6 paramedic positions per shift. Six paramedic firefighter positions, not counting driver, engineer, captain, or BC. And we have 4 EMT positions per shift currently. So when we take the paramedics out of those 6, that kind of drops us down. But if we were to hire more EMTs, we potentially could, we really are going to put ourselves in a position of maybe having to change lead policies and modify who they can trade with. And there is a potential, and we have the ability to maybe think about doing that if we don't see any, if these boosts don't do anything, we might have to have that discussion and determine whether or not we need to modify that. We're still within the allowances that we have with the MOU with the union, but the more paramedics we have, the less reconfiguration of the policies and procedures that we have to allow people time off and get them out the door.
Could you share with us, give us some perspective on what those staff shortages mean for you in operations? How it's impacting you?
Sorry, would you repeat?
How the staff shortages impact your operations?
Yeah, certainly. We have continuous vacancies on every shift. And so if you have anyone take time off, or if we have people out on FMLA or sick leave, we automatically have to fill shifts. So right now we're seeing a pretty continuous amount of needing to fill shifts, and Donna could probably speak to the strain that puts administratively, but we do have pretty consistently throughout the week, I'll hear our duty chiefs let me know that we've got people on 48s and they're having to modify how they have day-to-day operations set up because of that. And then, of course, they just take into consideration a bit more the strain that puts on staff when they're directing resources throughout the day as well.
We allow them to modify their workload. If we have crews on 48s, we're not. I had a chief that used to, if you had to walk around with a rag in your back pocket, if someone showed up, you had to be buffing the rig or doing something. If they worked 48s and we had the capacity to let them sleep in or grab naps, or we recognize that, but it still is an issue, and that's still a concern. So, and I can't speak to it because I don't do the scheduling, but had most of the overtime been voluntary, or are we having to mandatory hold?
Most of it's voluntary.
Okay, so
there's somebody calling in sick.
And how does this current staffing shortage compare to where you typically are? So probably always have some shortage of staffing. I understand how that goes, but
Pre-COVID,
just more. Okay.
Yeah, I would say
More
it is.
you've had lately.
Yeah, so I would say it's probably more comparative to somewhat pre-COVID, if that's what you were intending. Is that
I'm
what you
asking
meant?
it because
There's this
It's
a line there, I understand.
right.
Well, I think traditionally we've had applicants in the queue. I think that's the difference.
Right.
We have had 2 and 3 vacancies and 4 vacancies, but we've always had a process going where we had qualified applicants testing and getting the sites, and it was more of a turnover process than vacancies with no one in the queue. If that makes sense. That was we have always had someone pre-COVID. We have always had someone or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 going. That was part of our challenges. We were continuing running processes to get people in the door because we always had 2 or 3 vacancies. And even though we've raised the amount of people that we have, we still have 2 or 3 vacancies, but now we're not getting people in the door. So then when we lose one, or 5, you know, and that's tough.
One example, when we initially had the funding to put the fourth 24-hour ambulance into service, it was initially intended to be more of a firefighter paramedic approach. And then we weren't getting enough applicants to fill our vacancies even, and much less additional staffing. And so that's when we made the decision to transition that over to a BLS unit.
That's been helpful.
Yes.
It has been very helpful.
And given the numbers, we could probably do that again, but that's at risk of, you know, finding that balance between ALS, BLS. It's a concern. We want to make sure we're in a good position. We don't want to set ourselves up for failure.
And do we know the temperature of the union? I know you said it's kind of within the parameters of the MOU right now, but do we know if that's even something they would entertain with?
We have,
More?
well, I mean, we have an MOU that allows us to go 50% of the line staff.
Oh, okay.
And below, not in designated positions, but
Yeah,
firefighters.
non-officer position.
Right, 50, we have an MOU that allows us to do 50% of that. But if we do start moving more than where we are now, we'll have to have a conversation with them, because we're gonna have to modify some of the other things. We're gonna have to restrict trades to paramedic, and some of those things that we don't do now. But we watch it, and they have to make sure, but it would change some of the conditions that we'd have to have a dialogue with them.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that they would or wouldn't.
Yeah, no,
I'm saying it's one of those things that we have to watch. I think we may have to pull the trigger on it sooner than later, but
still the 48th wear. Let's see.
yeah.
But the more stress that you put on the existing paramedics here, you don't want to lose even more.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so that we're cautious about that. That's one of those things, sir.
Mhm.
Well, we have some good folks here that are doing good things, and we want to do whatever we can to keep them. And part of this is that, but
yeah,
we're also trying to get to the end result that will allow that to make it a win for them.
Totally.
If you want to brief my.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I had the opportunity to go out to Yamhill Fire Department. They had a life-saving ceremony. We had a cardiac arrest June 23rd that had a positive result. The patient was transported via life flight up to St. V's. Sounds like he had a fully blocked LAD, and they were able to place a couple stents. It was a very good example of how our community partners come together. We had dispatchers from Wycombe. Yamhill PD had an officer arrive within about 4 minutes of dispatch and started CPR. Well, sorry, resumed CPR. Wife had been able to move patient to the floor and was attempting. And then YCSO Carlton, I actually happened to be out in Carlton with their responders at an event and went out with them. And so it was a very well-rounded response. Our own medic crew arrived and did a very good job. And we've had a few code saves and ceremonies throughout the last year, probably about 4 now. We've seen an uptick a bit, so we're very excited about that, and our partners are as well.
Was I think it's the Lucas device, was that used on that call as well?
It actually wasn't on that call, but it has made a difference in at least a couple of our code saves. So,
Awesome.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
thank you.
Thank you. Anything from training chief or fire marshal?
Wrong.
I just want to give a brief update. As of about an hour and a half ago, we had our first fire hazard awareness sign installation. So we received 3, you guys seen the fire hazard signs that give the, low, moderate, we chose 3 locations through the district, one at Baker Creek and Hill, and it's up and the dial's showing, we're actually in high right now. We have 2 more locations we've scouted. One of them, we were unable to get it installed because there was a hornet's nest and the installer ran for their lives trying not to get stung by bees. So we're still working on that one. We're gonna try to get that hornet's nest figured out. And we have another, that's at Peavine and Youngsburg Hill, second location. And then we have another sign that we scouted at Masonville off of 18. And unfortunately, ODOT denied our permit for that, but we're looking at moving it further north up Masonville to kind of capture folks that are heading into the wildland area. So more to come on that, but we had the first one installed today, and we had received some wildfire grants from the State Fire Marshal's office, which is helping pay for those sign installations. So pretty excited. So if you drive up just west of the roundabout at Baker Creek and Hill, you'll see the sign on the right hand side.
Who turned the dial?
We're gonna do it ourselves. We've asked, like for Peavine Youngsburg Hill, I've recruited our old fire marshal to at least check on it for us, but we receive weekly updates from Forest Grove ODF. They're the ones that kind of control the hazard signs, what level we're in. So we'll monitor it, but we might encourage some of our folks who live out in those areas to change them for us. So exciting times. New stuff. We never had those signs before, and yeah, it's a great awareness piece, especially with all the wildfire. We got a lot of Oregon's a wildfire state, so it's good for the community. That's all I have.
Is there anything, I don't believe there is, but is there anything on those signs that say like burn season closed or anything like that?
No, that's something that I want to pursue in the future. We've had some folks that have, especially up, the Peavine area, who have some concerns about that. There's more to come on that. I think there is some opportunity for that. We just want to be careful about where you place them. It's actually harder to put signs in than you think, because you got to be careful about. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I learned the hard way. Especially, and working with ODOT, it took a little bit of time, but county permissions, city permissions, right of way issues, and breakaway requirements for signs, and there's a lot to it. So we actually received the signs back in May, and it took us a couple months. And then contractor bids, we had some pretty high bids for but we found a company out of Dayton that's done a great job, and they've been really easy to work with. So, but then they got stung by bees. So, but more to come.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Chief Law, anything?
This week, we finalized the County Training Association meeting, our fall academy schedule for Recruit Academy. It'll be starting October 14th. We do it after Pete's Pancake Pete, so that we can make sure and have all our support there. Chief Hannafin's been reaching out to a handful of volunteers applications that we've had. Those backgrounds have been completed, and we're pulling them in next week or the week after for interviews. I think we're at
4 to 6, depending on the schedules.
So we're looking at bringing those in, and then that academy will run in October, November, and then the final weekend with the live fire training on the acquired structure will be the first weekend of December. So we'll be working on getting them up to speed on that. So yeah, I think that's the big thing this week.
Thank you.
Can I have a do-over, Mr. President?
Sure.
Not do-over, but add on.
Claim two.
An add-on. There's a couple of topics that are out there that I haven't briefed the board on yet because I'm not able to because of my position. One of those is the IGA with the city for the transfer of the assets and the employees and the debt. The city, I expect, will probably have, Jeff is out from Saturday to Saturday. So I expect hopefully I'll have an IGA for the second meeting in September. For the board to take a look at. I'll make sure Truman's at whatever meeting that comes to, so you have access to your attorney. You see that, or make sure he has a chance to review it, obviously, before that meeting. The other thing is, we have been meeting with PERS regularly on the transition. We have a draft resolution ready to rock and roll for PERS. The only thing holding us from making that happen is the IGA with the city. So we have some bigger things queued and in the queue and ready to move forward. Some of it's just waiting for the process of the city for it to get up here. So we can start having our dialogue on that.
Have we heard if we get the established PERS rate or for a new?
Yes, so it's kind of a blend. We will get the current rate we pay for the city for the next biennium. So through 25, we'll get the benefit of the current rate if we stay in the pool and don't go independent. hers and the accountants and the other accountants I've talked to have suggested staying with the pool because of the longer term stability rather than independent because we're so small. One young retirement can throw our rates way out of whack. And we have a couple folks that are coming down the boat. When I say young retirement, I mean, 55 or that, because then they project that out over the life and this organization is carrying a debt of a $700,000 or $800,000 retirement by itself. So they suggested and recommended we stay into the pool. So going into the pool, we'll keep our rates where we are currently at the same as the city's rates. The debt transferring over for that will just be based on the payroll that our department carries with it. So that will not be an incur, but we still will get some benefit from the city's on the backside. So.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
No, I just wanted to let you, though we haven't talked about that yet, but there's a lot of stuff and a lot of things happening, but I just wanted to brief you that there is work on that. We've had several meetings with PERS, several meetings with the city on some of the other stuff. So those things are moving forward. And as soon as I have something to bring to you, I'll have it.
And then correspondence, has anybody had any outreach in their inboxes from citizens?
Nope.
All right, any informational items anybody'd like to share? And then we had tentatively talked about having a 4th regularly scheduled meeting next week. It doesn't sound like that's needed for our chief's process or the IGA, so I would like to cancel that meeting and make our next meeting our regularly scheduled second Tuesday in September, which is September 14th at 6 p.m. here at Station 1. And with that, I'll adjourn the meeting tonight at 6:53 p.m.